Not ready yet. Ooh, that's a good one. You know, if more people had planted toilet paper trees, we really wouldn't be having these issues. Hey, welcome. I'm going to try something new here. A new, shall we say, top 100. This time my focus is upon some music I really, really like. Wow, what do I like? And it's looking at music that's left of the dial. This is from the 80s. This is one of my favorite box sets from the 80s, Left of the Dial. And it's called Dispatches from the 80s Underground. And what it looks at is college radio. In the 80s, Rolling Stone, they even had a special section. So, and they would have, your top 50, Billboard top 50. They wound up having one for college radio because it became its own separate kind of a list, because it was the different types of music. It had the goth in there. There was the punk. Post-punk was part of it. You would have, alt country, the beginnings of that, electronica, everything. It was just kind of thrown into this college radio pot. And at the college stations, colleges had radio stations that were playing all of this, but this is what they were buying. And in the 80s, I was in my 20s, and I was really interested in this. Sure, I bought a lot of the big hits, Thompson Twins, Flock of Seagulls, but this other stuff was super exciting. So I want to go through, and I want to show 100 albums. It's going to take 10 weeks, 10 a week, like I did on my top 100. Are these necessarily in my order? No, I can't say that this was 100, this is 90. It kind of flows the right way, but it can change. Some of these albums I haven't listened to in 20, 30 years, to be honest. And I put them on again for the first time, and I said, wow, this is really, really good, because it changes. Suddenly I'm hearing things that I didn't hear before. In the 90s, you bought a lot of this stuff really cheap. These albums, these groups, they had one hit, maybe two hits. And now you listen to it again, and it's really exciting. And my host for this will be Cat. And Cat's been kind of sick, but he's feeling much better now. Obviously, here he is. So he will be part of this, though not a big part of it. So, welcome. Welcome to Left of the Dial, the alternative music of the 80s. And I hope you get a kick out of it. Should be some things you'll know. There should be, hopefully, some new albums you don't know. And we're going to explore them together, okay? So here we go. First album, we'll call it number 100. This is a group called Big Dipper. And the name of the album was called Boo Boo. What a great name, Boo Boo. So Big Dipper, it's a Boston, they're from Boston, and it's kind of a indie jingle pop rock band. And this is their 1987 EP that they came out with. These guys, they formed from the remnants of the groups Volcano Suns and the Embarrassments. And the Embarrassments actually was a pretty good group. They put out some albums. They did 4 studio albums between 1987 and 1990, and obviously this was the first one. So when I think of Big Dipper, you kind of think of a lot of ferocious guitar noise, but yet can be these celestial vocals and harmonies that tend to go on. Their first song, which is right here, that they ever did, their first single was Faith Healer, and that did get some airplay. When I listen to this album, you kind of get tinges of some glam rock and some country twang in there. And overall, it really has a good time feel. It's kind of a good power pop band, and they sing really gleefully. They sing about happy things like arson and murder and just about sin that happens in prison. I mean, how much fun is that? These guys, they actually, even there's one romantic song on here. not so much romantic, it's a tale of woe, and it's about trying to capture the Loch Ness Monster. The Loch Ness Monster. So, I mean, kind of a fun, a goofy type band that came out of Boston. Big Dipper. We'll put that at number 100. All right, number 99 is the group Hunters and Collectors. And look, I paid $5 for this back, again, probably the 90s. Yeah, maybe I'll get around to getting some of these stickers off. Hunters and Collectors, it came out of Melbourne, Australia, and they were formed in 1981. And they went on to about 1998, and then they reformed in 2013, and they're still playing. They were like a combination of pub rock and art rock. Originally, what really influenced them was krautrock, and you could hear a lot of strong percussion and noisy guitars along with a driving bass. I would say when they started, they were a little bit similar in vein to, say, Talking Heads, Remain in Light, that type of music. They even had a brass section, which they called the Horns of Contempt. Ooh, wow. This is their self-titled album, and this came out in 1982, and it peaked at number 21 in Australia. Ooh, creepy, huh? They did release a total of 9 albums. You could put them in a vein similar to Midnight Oil and the Hoodoo Gurus. I found on here that the lyrics were fairly oblique, and a lot of the album was filled with, I guess, let's say, challenging, noisy rock and rhythms. Again, they were trying to get a feel of what they were doing. At times, it seemed like it was almost filled with like horrendous noise and this gripping drama, and then with those horns, it made this slithery funk that was going on. Later albums became more mainstream, but this one here is kind of a raucous jumble, shall we say, of noise and a lot of ideas that were all tossed into one pot as they're trying to figure out, hey, what the hell we're doing. It's one of those albums I've listened to now after many years, and I go, okay, I get this. I'm kind of enjoying this, so a lot of fun. Number 99, Hunters and Collectors. Number 98 is The Flying Lizards. Now, as I talk about these albums, in the background, I am playing that actual album, and I know I try to keep it down, but it can give you a feel kind of for what some of this music is. So The Flying Lizards, this was an experimental English new wave band. They formed in 76, and they lasted till 84. Basically, it was post-punk / art punk. A lot of people consider them to be kind of a novelty group because they took classic songs and they really reduced them to a parody with this, shall we say, a neo-Kraftwerk type synthesizer minimalism, and then they would put like robotic deadpan vocal readings to it. They did have a hit though. They probably had a few over in the UK, but the one that we know most is called Money, That's What I Want. And that song's been used in so many different movies. They did release 4 different albums, but this was the first one. This is their self-titled, and it came out in 1980. And it was labeled at that time as kind of an exercise in pop absurdism, and the reason why is they included like Sanskrit chants, found sounds, and just these odd musical textures. I mean, it was like, huh? What? On the album, 2 of the musicians, one named Steve Bursford, probably got that wrong, and David Toop, they were both improvisational musicians that they brought in. So, I mean, what are you going to get with that? You're going to get something pretty odd, huh? It starts off with a song called Mandalay Song, and it just has this high-pitched, screeching vocals. Seriously, I got up and checked my turntable to make sure it was okay. I checked, is this on the right RPMs? Did I screw something up? That's how bizarre it was. Then it kind of gets in. There's a song called Russia, and it's an electronic instrumental, and it's just filled with bleeps and blips and a driving bass. They do a version of Eddie Cochran's Summertime Blues, and it's a sparse, robotic instrumentation, and it's sung with just this monotone voice. I mean, they absolutely took all the joy out of that song. They sucked it completely out. Not easy to dance to. And of course, what you hear in the background, it's Money, That's What I Want. They did a different version for the dance floors, and I think that's the one that you hear more. This one is a lot more sparse, less instrumentation, but again, very robotic. Really different kind of group. You know what? There's times where I'm sure the Flying Lizards are great, but again, it wasn't important. They were different, and they were very definitely left of the dial. Number 98, the Flying Lizards self-titled album. Number 97, we have the Inmates, and this is their album 5. Fifth album, huh? This is a British pub rock band, and they formed in '77, and they kept playing till, I believe, 2008. They formed after the breakup of the group Flying Tiger. In their time, they released 12 albums, so they were pretty prolific. It's kind of like a cross between early Stones and Dave Edmunds. They really, I can't say they offer anything new, but they make some really good primal rock and roll with this rockabilly feel to them. The very first album was called First Offense, and it had this really big hit in the U.S. where they took the Standells' Dirty Water and they put their spin on it. And if you can find that one, First Offense, that is by far the Inmates' very best album. Well, 5, this one was released in 1985, and it starts off with the song Let's Move, which is playing in the background. And that's just a pure rockabilly type classic with a Dave Edmunds style vocal to it. Barry Masters, the lead singer from this, he was new to the group now, and he came from Eddie and the Hot Rods, and he's doing the vocals. There's also the song, let's see, I Think I'm Getting Over You, and it's kind of like this power pop gem. It's filled with close harmonies and lots of oohs supported by a driving guitar. Then they got another one that I really like, just like Romeo and Juliet. It has very tight vocals, lots of hey, hey, heys, and some really fun guitar solos happening. It's a perfect album, especially for the 60s when you think of rock. This album really, it's for lovers of good time rock and roll and those that like power pop. It's just a perfect album for them. Inmates, number 97, 5. Well worth it. Come on, let's move. Come on, let's move. Oh yeah, let's move. Gonna settle down in a brand new town. Let's move. Well, you got your fingers burned, left, right, and tables turned. Ain't the first time, all the last. Don't stay living in the past. It's a brand new day. Let's get away. Let's move. Come on, let's move. Come on, let's move. Oh yeah, let's move. Gonna settle down in a brand new town. Let's move. Ain't this just a waste of time? Number 96 is Laurie Anderson, and this is her album Big Science. Yeah, another freaking sticker. How about that? She was born in 1947 in Glen Ellen, Illinois, and she really is known for her art pop, electronic, and avant-garde pop music. Laurie Anderson, she was a composer, a musician, a film director, and in 1992, she married Lou Reed. She created what's called the tape bow violin, where she took magnetic tape, and instead of the strings on the violin, she used the magnetic tape and then put a magnetic tape head within the bridge. In 1982, she released her debut album. This is called which is this album, Big Science. There's her violin. And this was the first of a 7-album deal that she had with Warner Brothers. It contained her best-known hit called Oh Superman, which is playing in the background. and that actually went to #2 in the UK. The music on this album, it's a selection from her 8-hour production that was called the United States Live. It's filled with this quirky spoken word type lyrics. She sings. She kind of sings. She has a sing-song narrative, and her voice is often electronically treated. So the music just appears to be way ahead of its time. I mean, it is different. She did a follow-up album. Well, she did a bunch of them, but her follow-up album was this one here, is Mr. Heartbreak. And this had additional songs from her play, United States Live. What's interesting on this one is she had William Burroughs do a reading on an album called Sharky's Night, and Peter Gabriel also did vocals on a song called Excellent Bird. And this album, this one, Heartbreak, which I'm not talking about, Mr. Heartbreak sold 44,000 copies in France. Yeah, big time. The French love this album. I don't know about the rest of the world. Laurie Anderson, you can find this generally in dollar bins. If you want something kind of quirky, something different, but you just have to sit and listen to it more and more, and you go, hey, that is pretty neat stuff. So check out Big Science, number 96 from Laurie Anderson. Number 95 is The Coolies. So the Coolies were an alternative post-punk band out of Atlanta, Georgia. They formed in '86 and they lasted all the way to '89. They called themselves the Coolies because they said that word is defined as someone who does a lot of heavy work for little pay, which is what they felt was happened to them. They did a total of 3 albums, and they once labeled their music as laughabilly, okay? So this is their first album, Dig, and this came out in '86. It consists of 9, shall we say, tongue-in-cheek covers of Simon & Garfunkel classics, plus 1 Paul Anka cover, Having My Baby, which they totally destroy. And this is like frat party set of tunes. Let me tell you, these guys don't take it seriously. They give Scarborough Fair, which is playing in the background, kind of a psychedelic funk groove. And then there's Mrs. Robinson, which I'll play a snippet, which is a surf instrumental. Other songs on here take on more of a kind of a garage rock type feel. The vocals, let's face it, they aren't great, but that's really not the point of this. They don't go fast. They don't do these covers fast like, the group Me First and the Gimme Gimmes. It's just all about having fun and distorting classic songs. Now, their follow-up album after this was called Doug, and it was a rock opera. And it was about a skinhead who murders a transvestite short order cook, gets rich by publishing his recipes, falls into paranoia and substance abuse, and ends up living in the gutter. Now, that is some highbrow stuff, man. On here they have, on the back they go, let's see, they go, why don't the Coolies play original songs? And the answer is, they do. Just ask Paul Simon. He wrote them all. And do the Coolies like to party? Only in groups of 1 or more and on certain special occasions, like the drop of a hat. Just crazy stuff. Just crazy ass stuff. This is a fun album. It's not something you're going to listen to all the time, but they really do a different take on Simon and Garfunkel. Number 95, The Coolies. Number 94, Beat Farmers. And the name of the album is Tales of the New West. So Beat Farmers is an American cowpunk band that came out of San Diego. They were formed in 83 and went to about 95. You know, their music, shall we say, it's kind of an amalgamation of some cowpunk, jangle pop, roots rock, rockabilly's in there, swamp rock, country rock. It's all mixed in this thing. You know, the band was formed by their drummer, Country Dick Montana, and he played for Penetration and the Crawdaddies. The other one that helped for it was Jerry Rainey, and he was a singer and guitarist for The Shames and Glory. An early incarnation of their group was called Country Dick and the Snuggle Bunnies. Should I say they played the bar circuit and didn't go anywhere? So, hey, they changed it to Beat Farmers. This is their first album, and it was released in '85. They had actually kind of a seminal hit on this called Happy Boy, and it gained attention from Dr. Demento, and he began playing it. But they also do covers from Bruce Springsteen, Reason to Believe, and Velvet Underground. They do a cover of There She Goes Again, and also one from Jon Stewart called Never Going Back. You know, and really, you know, it's like 50s music come 80s with a slab of, shall we say, neo-country rock stomp happening. And they do it with a lot of enthusiasm, and they do it with a lot of love. And you can really feel this. I mean, they do this country take on the Velvet Underground, There She Goes Again. But it's done with seriousness and respect. It's just filled with upbeat guitars and drums. It's happening right now in the background if you can hear it. They also, the song Happy Boy, it really is a fun cut. It's done with a traditional cowboy type rhythm. It's about a happy boy who gets hit by a car, but no problem because things are going his way. Hubba bubba. It's just, it is a fun song. This was one of those albums that I listened to, didn't quite, and I put it back, and now I pulled it out again and go, dang, this is good. And so far, almost all these albums I've shown you are very inexpensive and can be found out there. But Beat Farmers, Tales of the New West, number 94. Number 93 is The Dwarfs. The Dwarfs is a hardcore punk band that came out of Chicago back in the mid-'80s, and they're still producing music. They started kind of as a garage punk band, but they did move into the hardcore punk movement. Currently, they're out of San Francisco. These guys, they became notorious for their live shows, where there was self-mutilation, onstage sex, and hard drugs. Lionel Richie, I'm sure he was at several of these. Their live shows generally would last maybe about 15 minutes and were often cut short because of spectator injury. Also, most of their songs, and this is the God honest truth, do not go over 1 minute, and there are no solos. You know, there was a thread about any songs under 2 minutes. Any Dwarves album, every single song is under 2 minutes. They're under 1 minute. This is Lucifer's Crank, and this was originally a cassette EP, but that was self-issued in 1988. All the songs on here are hard and fast and extremely short. Free Cocaine is another album from the Dwarfs, and this compiles everything that they did from 86 to 88, including what's on this album. I mean, they can be described as fast as hell, catchy, very raunchy, and hardcore punk. Some call it, in fact, scum punk, believe it or not, because of their very intentional perversity of their lyrics. Myself, I really have a hard time understanding their lyrics, so I wouldn't know what really they're saying anyway. but these guys are fast, they're hard, and if you like your punk that way, you will never go wrong with the Dwarves. And also, it doesn't take you very long to get through one of their albums. That's number 93, the Dwarves. Number 92 is the Descendants. The Descendants it's a punk band that came out of Manhattan Beach, California. They've released 7 studio albums and 3 different live albums. I would say an early description of their music would be coffeeed out blend of rock, surf, pop, punk music. I mean, there's a lot of adrenaline and going on. It was also described as probably surf-inspired power pop with a new wave edge. How's that? Try and figure that one out. They continue to transform as they went into a more hardcore type punk band, and some do label it as melodic hardcore punk. They've broken up, they've reformed, they've done this 5 different times, but they're still outperforming. Really, their biggest, the most important one is this one. This was the first one, Milo Goes to College. And if you had one Descendants to find in vinyl, this would be it, which I do not own. But this is an absolute important classic. Their lead singer, Milo, went to college, and he did graduate with a PhD in biophysics, I believe. I mean, he was a pretty smart guy. So, but this came out in '86, and it was called Enjoy. Their drummer, Bill Stevenson, produced it. Instead of song titles on the back, what they did is they printed various euphemisms of feces. Yeah, how's that for fun, okay? Some of them I did know was names for poop, but that's what they did. The first song title, Enjoy, I mean, it's really a song based about farting and basic, to me, just a lot of gross vulgarity sprinkled with a lot of stupidity. And you're just like, what? Really? Okay. It's sophomore humor here. But then this album, it's still full of spectacular, original, satirical hardcore. Songs like Hurtin' Crew. There's the Anglo-popping Get the Time and the surly noise of A Days Are Blood. I mean, it is really good. They can sing, and you do hear, I mean, there's melodic hardcore punk happening here. They also do a very, very peppy version of the Beach Boys' Wendy. I'm going to play you 2 tracks because I want you to hear the 2 sides of the Descendants. It is a fun group. If you find that in vinyl, please pick it up. Send me one if you find an extra. All Number 91, The Tapes. The name of this album is Party. These guys hail out of the Netherlands, and it's, shall we say, post-punk art rock type group. It's very similar to me when I listen to it to Gang of Four, minus the funk that Gang of Four would add into their music. They formed in 1977 and they broke up in 1982. This album came out in 1980. Some people have described them as Netherlands' answers to the Talking Heads 77. You think of the very first Talking Heads, because there's this frantic vocals. You think of David Byrne, this paranoid type vocals, and they got it on here too. It does. It sounds similar. The guitars, to me, reminded me somewhat of Adrian Belew. It has that type of sound to them. When I think of some music from King Crimson or Roxy music, some of that guitar work sounds similar. The lyrics, for me, they're not always very decipherable. And the music, I mean, it can be extremely frantic and somewhat complicated. Just a little bit strange. As they got, after a few years, they only lasted until 82, but they began to morph more into dance and electronic type band. And they did put out 3 albums, and this is actually their 2nd album. This again was the first time I bought it and I put it on, and I'm like, wow, I'm sure glad I didn't pay a lot of money to it. But now that I've listened to it again, and I hear this energy and just the crazy instrumentation going on, I've really begun to appreciate it. I've really been digging it, so it's kind of exciting. Again, a very inexpensive album. So if you see it, give it a try. The Tapes Party. It's number 91. Thanks. That's what I got for our first week. I already got the next one almost half done, but we'll pull this through 10 weeks. I seem to have a little bit more time. I hope you're enjoying it. Drop a comment. Let me know what you're thinking. You know what? Don't really have an order, but these are just some of that fun stuff that came out of the 80s that wasn't all about hair metal and synthesizers. There's a lot of good music from the 80s. Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening. Bye.